welcome back to the NFL Abroad podcast. In this video, we're going to give you our mid-season NFL awards. So, without further ado, let's get into it. First off, of course, we have the MVP. Minnie, who are you taking in this one?
Well, I've not got a quarterback, and that may come as a surprise. I've actually got Christian McCaffrey. The man leads the league for most rushing yards with 652 yards, and he's currently one game away from breaking the all-time consecutive touchdown scoring record. Big things to come for Christian McCaffrey. Love him. I think he's a player that you can't hate, and I look forward to seeing more from him.
Yeah, well, this is awkward because I've also got Christian McCaffrey as my MVP as well. I mean, he's got 944 total yards. He's got 13 touchdowns. And I just don't think there's any quarterback really that's jumping off the screen at me this season. I just think McCaffrey is more valuable to a team than any other quarterback has been for their team so far this season. My other option was Tyreek Hill, but I just think in terms of yardage, there's not much in it, and in terms of touchdowns, Christian McCaffrey is far ahead. And also, I just think McCaffrey is more valuable to the 49ers than Tyreek is to the Dolphins. We've seen Tyreek obviously in the big games this season not come up trumps for the Dolphins. He had quiet games against the Bills, quiet games against, who did they play last week? It was
the Chiefs,
yeah,
and the Eagles.
Yeah, so for me, that's the reason why Tyreek is not the MVP, because he's not been as productive in the big games that matter. So next up then, we've got the Offensive Player of the Year. Minnie, take it away.
Yeah, well, I hope we haven't got the same one, but I've got a feeling we might have. It's actually the man that you've just mentioned, Mr. Tyreek Hill. He leads the league for most receiving yards. He's on 1,076 already. That's in 9 games. That's crazy. His numbers are phenomenal, and he's put up 8 touchdowns. The only negative thing I can say about him is he had a fumble last week against the Chiefs, and if that didn't happen, they could have potentially won that game.
Okay, this is getting a bit awkward because I've also got Tyreek Hill as my Offensive Player of the Year. Pretty much the exact same ranges that you said. I mean, he's on course for 2,000 receiving yards season, and if it wasn't for Christian McCaffrey, he'd almost certainly be the MVP for me. And obviously, if he continues, it's going to be hard to argue against him if he sets the record for a receiver in a season. But for me, it's also about how far this team can go and whether he comes up in big games. So far, he's not proved that, but if he continues to prove it, then he could be upgraded from Offensive Player of the Year to MVP. But for right now, he is my Offensive Player of the Year. Next up, then, we've got the Offensive Rookie of the Year, and I'm 99.999% sure we're going to agree on this one as well. But please, take it away.
Well, I mean, I wonder who you've got for this award then, Vin. I really do wonder. I've actually got CJ Stroud, believe it or not.
What a shock that is.
Yeah, he's the second best quarterback in the league through yards per game. He's already thrown 14 touchdowns and only 1 interception. We've talked about this. That stat alone is it's crazy. It's phenomenal. The guy is a genius, and he's turned a poor 3-13 Texans team into a 4-4 team on the season. And who knows how far they could go. They're certainly well coached, and he's such an exciting young prospect. Look forward to seeing more from Mr. CJ Stroud.
Yep, you'll never believe it. I've also got CJ Stroud as my Offensive Rookie of the Year. I honestly think this is the award we could give out now, halfway through the season, to CJ Stroud, and it'd be fine. Like, we don't we never regret it. I don't think there's anybody really who can do anything really for the rest of the season, or I can see catching him. As a rookie, the hardest position in the league to play is quarterback, and he's doing such a phenomenal level to the point where he's actually already a top 10 quarterback in the league. It's just absolutely phenomenal. Obviously, Puka Nacua had an argument, but again, he's dropped off a little bit. Devon Witherspoon, he's obviously been injured, and I just don't see anybody surpassing what CJ Stroud's done for the first 9 weeks for the rest of the season. So yeah, I'd honestly give him the award now if I could. Right, we're going to the defensive side of the ball now then, and hopefully we'll have a disagreement at some point here. Somebody, who is your Defensive Player of the Year?
Well, there's a few names in the hat, but one man is standing out to me, and he's stood out all season, and he's certainly helped his team achieve what they've achieved so far, and he's one of the main reasons why they're so successful this season, and it's that man, Myles Garrett. On the season, he's had 25 tackles, 9.5 sacks. He's had 4 forced fumbles. He's recovered a fumble, He's blocking field goals. This man can do everything. And I'm convinced that if he doesn't get a drugs test, there's going to be some sus articles coming out because this guy is scary. He can do absolutely everything, and I'm convinced he must be taking something.
Can you please get out of my head? Because my defensive player of the year is also Myles Garrett. Pretty much for the exact reasons you said about the fumbles, the false fumbles, the sacks. And for me also, it's just the fact that like he's a major part in what is now the best defense in the league. You know, they're allowing the fewest yards per game. They're pretty much taking over games. And the reason the Browns are so good and are in contention for a playoff spot is down to that defense. And I just don't think there's a defender in the league that is more important to a team than Myles Garrett. You know, TJ Watt was certainly with a claim. But again, the Steelers defense is not as good as that of the Browns. Obviously, my guy, Micah Parsons, his numbers aren't up there right now with Garrett's. But he certainly could have been in the argument. But for me, right now, I mean, Myles Garrett as well, let's not forget, he was taking over, I believe, special teams a couple of weeks ago. He can do everything, that man. And for that reason, is my defensive player of the year. Moving on then.
He certainly can.
Sorry.
I'll just let me just mention Max Crosby. He's got a shout. He's actually got 9.5 sacks on the season already. He's up there with 56 tackles and a forced fumble. And then my other guy, not as good, probably a little bit lower down my list. I've actually got Aiden Hutchinson. He's on 23 tackles, 4.5 sacks, and a forced fumble. So don't think he's the same caliber of player as Myles Garrett, and that's why he's further down the list. But yeah, Myles Garrett, different gravy.
Yep, so moving on then to the defensive rookie of the year. I beg we disagree on this one, but go on.
Well, again, I've got a few names that I can throw in the hat. I actually made a video on this a couple of weeks ago, and it's not changed at all. So hopefully you don't know this, but if you've seen the video, you're gonna. I've actually got Jalen Carter, first-round rookie at the Philly Eagles, defensive tackle. And is he Aaron Donald 2.0 or is he better? I think he could be better, you know. He's got 16 tackles, 4 sacks and 2 forced fumbles on the season. This guy is a machine. And let's not forget that he's been injured for a small part of the season, so who knows what his numbers would be.
Well, finally, we've disagreed on an award. My defensive rookie of the year is that man, Devon Witherspoon. He's on 2 sacks for the season. He's got an interception and a pick 6. And for me, it's just the fact, the differentiating factor for me between Jalen Carter and Devon Witherspoon was the fact that Carter obviously slotted in to arguably the best team in the league. And I just think it's more impressive what Witherspoon's doing on a less dominant team than the Eagles than what Carter's doing on that Eagles team. I think he's surrounded by that much talent that it's easier for him to succeed because the other players are getting so much attention. Whereas Witherspoon, you know, he's been so good in coverage this season. He's just not allowing any receivers open. I can't remember who it was the other week who I think it was Jamar Chase actually, just didn't give him a sniff of the ball all game. And I just think for a rookie cornerback, he's had an absolutely phenomenal season. And yeah, for me, I'd take Witherspoon over Jalen Carter at this point in time.
Yeah, the guy's been phenomenal. To be fair, from what we've seen this season, he's definitely in my shortlist. Another man that you could potentially throw in the hat is Will Anderson Jr. The Texans traded up for him in the 3rd round, and he's on 30 tackles and 2 sacks for the season, so that's not going unnoticed, and he's certainly helping that Texans team become who they are today.
Yeah, and also
next one,
Brian Branch for the Lions. He also deserves an honourable mention. Obviously, he wasn't drafted as high as some of these other players, but he's certainly put in a certain a great performance for the Lions, and it's not going under the radar with us. That's for sure.
No, he has slotted in well, and when you're slotting in next to Aiden Hutchinson, you sort of know what you're going to expect with that Lions defense, and they've been solid all season, to be fair.
Yeah. Next up then, we've got the Coach of the Year award. I imagine we're not going to have the same one here, but who have you got, man?
Well, I've actually got a couple for this, and I'm not sure which way I want to go with it. I could be obvious, and I could go Andy Reid and the Chiefs because they're flying again this season. But I'm actually going to be a little bit different here, and I'm actually going to go for D'Amico Ryans at the Texans. He came in January 2023, and he's completely turned that team around. Yes, you can put it down to CJ Stroud been phenomenal, but it's the coaching that matters as much as well. The offensive coordinator, Blowy Slawick, the work that he's doing with him is fantastic. So D'Amico Ryans, I'm going to be different, and I'm going to give him the best coach right now.
Well, Minute, you haven't been that different because I also had D'Amico Ryan as my coach of the year. But because
what is going on here?
But because you have taken Because you've taken D'Amico Ryan, I will actually go somewhere else. Because I was in between two for this award. And the guy second on my list was Dan Campbell for the Lions. I mean, since he came into the organisation, he's completely turned that team around from one of the worst teams in football to now 6-2 on the season. Obviously, we saw them end the season last year. Was it 7 or 8 games unbeaten or something like that? Jared Goff didn't throw a pick for bloody 9 weeks or something. I can't remember exactly the stats. But yeah, he's completely transformed that Lions team. Got some great weapons on both sides of the ball now. And yeah, within the next year or two, they're certainly going to be in the hunt for a Super Bowl. So it's hard to look past Dan Campbell. I also want to give an honourable mention to Mike McDonald, the defensive coordinator of the Baltimore Ravens. No one coming into the season expected Baltimore to be as well defensively as they are, and a lot of that has got to go down to Mike McDonald. Obviously, there's a head coach award, but as a defensive coordinator, Mike McDonald's doing an absolutely fantastic job, and I'm sure at this point next season he will be in a head coaching role. And the final award for us then, a bit of a different one. It's actually the worst coach of the year. Minnie, is it the Saints head coach, or are you taking someone else here?
Well, not now. We're on a positive record, leading the NFC South. So I'm gonna back Dennis Allen at the moment. I've not really said that much this season. And if things turn for the worse, then potentially his name could be thrown in because his record with the Saints isn't brilliant. I think it's fairly obvious where I'm going with this one. It's that man Brian Daboll at the Giants. He's gone from hero to zero. People were singing his praises last year. I actually think he won. Did he win the best coach of the year last year?
Yeah.
And you know, you could argue that injuries and stuff like that the Giants are suffering with injuries, but I think it ultimately comes down to coaching as well. And Brian Daboll, he is having an absolute shocker this year.
Well, I do certainly think you've got a good point with Brian Daboll, but I've actually a slightly different route here. I've gone for Arthur Smith of the Atlanta Falcons. I believe they're now 3-4 or 3-5 on the season.
I love that shout.
For me personally, it's just his player management that I absolutely despise. He's got some absolutely unbelievable weapons on that team, which in the defense is one of the best in the league. Don't get me wrong, but on the offensive side of the ball, the amount of weapons they've got, they have no excuse to be bad on offense. The quarterback play's not been great, but use your good players. Use your Kyle Pitts. Use your Bijan Robinson. But use first round picks on. But he doesn't want to do that. He wants to sort of give everyone a touch, and he's using the second, third string tight ends to try and make trick plays in the end zone. You've got some of the best offensive weapons in the league in Robinson, London, Pitts. Use them. Use them for what you've drafted them for. And they should be a superpower offense, but under Arthur Smith, it's really not. And for me, at the end of the season, Smith will be gone out of Atlanta, and then the Saints will be in real trouble next season.
Yeah, no, I think that's a fair point. And the Falcons, before the season started, I was worried. I was worried for the Saints this year, and it sort of materialised into nothing, into disappointment, really. I've seen his interview technique, and I've listened to him a fair bit this season. And Arthur Smith, he is not that guy. He really isn't.
Well, that's everything for this episode of the NFL Abroad podcast. If you have enjoyed, please leave us a like, comment, and subscribe for more content in the future.